Lightning strikes as the earth literally falls apart. A massive tide of monsters surged from the ground, devouring the world in an instant. But humanity fought back. A group known as the Monster Killers rose up, and after 1,000 years of war, in 1852, they finally secured a victory. Flash forward to today, where things seem a lot more normal. At a club, a guy tries to charm a girl named Rin into a kiss. She just smirks, acting like she's fine with it. The guy leans in, puckering up with a face only a mother could love. Suddenly, a grotesque, multi-eyed hand rips through his face. The girl transforms into a nightmare, her body twisting as green blood sprays everywhere. Back in a quiet neighborhood, someone's shouting an apology from their balcony. The neighbor lady is already fed up, puffing on a cigarette with a look of pure annoyance. That's Fuma Akai. He looks like a sharp businessman, but right now he's just a polite dad holding a bag of trash. He bows deeply, introducing himself as the new neighbor, and hoping they'll get along. His daughter, Mitsuru Akai, is the complete opposite. She's pouting because she hates the city and misses the countryside. Fuma just laughs it off, apologizing again and mentioning how much he's always admired the city. He tells Mitsuru she needs to fix that attitude if she wants to make any friends at school today. Mitsuru isn't worried. She figures someone as cute as her will have a fan club by lunchtime. Then she realizes they're late. She panics and starts shoving her dad out the door. They sprint down the street, Fuma apologizing to every random person they pass. He begs the school guard to hold the gate as they barely make it inside. Welcome to Rikuhara Junior High. Fuma is already inside, apologizing his head off to the staff. In the principal's office, he's bowing so low his head is practically on the desk while the principal tries to calm him down. Fuma turns to leave, giving his daughter one last reminder to listen to her teachers. Mitsuru gives him a cheerful wave while the principal looks on with a smile. Once he's gone, she sighs. She knows people are going to start calling him Mr. Sorry if he keeps bowing like that. Class begins, and the teacher introduces the new transfer student to everyone. Mitsuru doesn't hold back, jumping out with a high-energy greeting and a pose. She starts rambling about her love for cooking and her favorite actor, Tsuyoshi Kenmochi. It doesn't quite land. Most of the class just stares at her in silence. One kid even yawns. In the back, a girl named Ito watches with a bored, condescending look. Mitsuru realizes her big debut was a total flop compared to what she imagined. The teacher points her toward an empty seat, so they can actually get to work. As she sits down, a girl with braids named Shinkai leans over to whisper to her. Turns out Shinkai is also a huge fan of the same actor. She's absolutely beaming as they find common ground. Mitsuru's face lights up. She finally made a real connection. And just like that, her life as a 5-time transfer student officially starts. A hawk flies over the building while she settles in. Later, she and Shinkai are getting along great, laughing together during a break. But things get weird when Shinkai warns her to stay far away from the storage warehouse behind the school. She claims it's haunted, saying that even without any wind, people's skirts will suddenly flip up over there. Mitsuru just laughs it off, thinking it's a typical ghost story. Her fun is cut short when Ito and her crew show up, demanding the transfer student go buy them juice. Mitsuru just leans on her hand, bored. She's seen bullies like this in every school she's been to. Ito is already breathing down her neck, demanding to know who she thinks she's talking to. She gets right in Mitsuru's face, but Mitsuru just sits there with a bored look on her face. Shinkai tries to intervene, but the bullies just shrug her off like she's nothing. Shinkai whispers a warning. Ito's family is a big deal around here, and it's safer to just play along. Mitsuru asks what flavor juice they want, acting like she's actually going to do it. The gang smirks, thinking they've already broken the new girl on her first day. Mitsuru walks back with a bag of juice, thinking about the promise she made her dad not to start any trouble. But when she rounds the corner, she sees something that makes her blood boil. Ito is literally grinding her heel into Shinkai's head while the poor girl sobs on the floor. Mitsuru drops the juice, shouting at them to stop. Ito doesn't look bothered at all, telling Mitsuru she showed up just in time for the main event. She offers a deal she'll let it slide if Mitsuru pours that juice right over Shinkai's head. The other girls egg her on, reminding her that nobody gets away with crossing Ito. Mitsuru's eyes go sharp. There's no way she's listening to a word they say. Instead of pouring the juice, she leans in and bites Ito's finger as hard as she can. Ito screams in pain, holding her hand while her friends freak out. Next thing they know, they're in the principal's office. He's livid, shouting about expulsion after only one day. Fuma is there too, promising to give his daughter a stern talking to while he apologizes for her behavior. As they walk home later that evening, Fuma asks what really happened back there. Mitsuru, casually eating an ice cream, just says she was helping a friend who was being bullied. Fuma reminds her she said the same thing at her last school. Mitsuru looks away, promising she'll try harder not to get kicked out this time. The next day at school, things get worse. Mitsuru finds her locker trashed and covered in some nasty-looking mess. She just stares at the garbage, her face completely blank. Ito and her gang show up again, ordering the transfer student to follow them. They lead her to the abandoned warehouse behind the school, far away from any teachers. Ito gets in her face, telling her she's as good as expelled if she does anything else. Mitsuru just sits on an old mattress, asking them what they're actually planning to do. Ito doesn't waste any time and orders the other girls to start the beating. A kick connects, sending Mitsuru's head snapping back. Ito warns her that if she tries to resist, they're going after Shinkai next. Bound by her promise and the threat to her friend, Mitsuru just takes the hits as blood splatters. The bullies laugh, thinking they've finally managed to quiet her down. Ito calls her a total idiot for risking everything to protect a girl she just met. Then things take a darker turn. Ito pulls out her phone and tells the girls to strip her she wants to film it. They start tearing at her jacket while Mitsuru just sits there, taking the humiliation. Ito starts digging into her personal life, asking if she really lives alone with just her dad. She mocks her, saying her mother must have been irresponsible to abandon a kid like her. Ito goes for another hit, her face twisted with a cruel grin. But suddenly, the air in the warehouse shifts. A dark, blood-red aura starts leaking from the shadows. Ito freezes, her eyes widening in pure terror as the atmosphere turns cold. From the darkness behind Mitsuru, a massive, multi-armed monster begins to crawl out. Ito screams, backing away and crying that she hasn't even done anything yet. The giant monster towers over everyone, its red eyes glowing through the dark, rainy atmosphere. Ito and her gang are paralyzed with fear as the demonic entity leans down, breathing right on them. Even Mitsuru looks stunned as the massive shadow looms over her, its presence suffocating. Suddenly, the monster snaps, its mouth a mass of jagged teeth as it tears through everything in its path. Out in the hall, a teacher hears a massive explosion coming from the direction of the storage room. The blast is so powerful it blows out the windows, sending students flying as glass shatters everywhere. Through the smoke and rubble, a horde of smaller, creepy-looking ghouls start crawling into the school. Mitsuru doesn't wait around to see what happens. She starts running as fast as her legs can carry her. The lead monster sniffs the air with a twisted grin, saying everything smells absolutely delicious. It swings a massive arm, clearing a path through the debris as it hunts for its next meal. Mitsuru is sweating bullets, terrified that this ghost is only getting more aggressive and dangerous. She nearly crashes into Shinkai in the hallway, both of them screaming in total panic. Shinkai is just glad to see her, asking if she's okay after that confrontation with Ito earlier. She notices Mitsuru looking back in horror, and wonders what could possibly be behind them. Right on their heels is a hulking, zombie-like beast, its red eyes locked onto them. The giant monster smashes through a wall, its massive hand reaching out to grab the fleeing students. Mitsuru grabs Shinkai and shouts for her to stay back, as they scramble to escape the carnage. The creature slams its fist down with enough force to shatter the concrete floor into a million pieces. It's a literal bloodbath, as the monster starts picking off anyone it can get its claws on. A teacher tries to stop them, shouting about the no running rule, completely oblivious to the nightmare behind him. He doesn't stay smug for long, realizing too late that something much worse than a rule breaker is approaching. Mitsuru scoops Shinkai up in a princess carry, telling her they need to get out of there right now. But the big monster is faster, landing right in their path and blocking the only exit. It prepares to strike, its massive form radiating pure, lethal intent. Mitsuru thinks the whole school is coming down in an earthquake, but it's just the monster's heavy footsteps. A giant, clawed hand reaches down, the beast growling that it wants more to eat. Mitsuru grits her teeth, realizing that for some reason, the monster is only targeting her. She tells Shinkai to run for it while she has the chance, planning to act as a distraction. But she's not fast enough. A massive fist closes around her, lifting her off the ground as she screams. The monster doesn't hesitate and takes a huge bite, blood spraying everywhere in the chaos. Just then, a flash of steel slices through the air, and the monster's lower half is suddenly severed. Fuma Akai stands there, holding his unconscious daughter in one arm and a katana in the other. The monster is in shock, staring at the weapon that just cut through its demonic hide. He recognizes the blade, its red eyes widening as it realizes exactly who it's dealing with. Fuma doesn't say a word, walking through the black flames and smoke as the monster trembles in his presence. Carrying Mitsuru, he walks away from the destruction, looking like a man who's done this 1,000 times. Later that evening, the school stands quiet under a red sunset. The nightmare finally over for now. Mitsuru finally wakes up in her own bed, feeling dizzy and struggling to remember how she got home. Her dad, Fuma, rushes into the room, still wearing his apron, tears streaming down his face. He's a total mess, sobbing that he thought his heart was going to stop when he heard she collapsed at school. Mitsuru's already over her dad's crying, calling it super lame. Fuma looks like he's actually taking it to heart though. She tells him she's physically fine, but she definitely saw some weird stuff during that explosion. He gets serious, warning her that she won't be able to stay at school if she keeps getting into these messes. Mitsuru isn't having it. She points out that those kids were the ones who started it. Then she drops a heavy one, asking why she doesn't even have a mom. Fuma just looks down, taking the blame for everything. While they're talking, this multi-eyed freak is literally scaling the wall outside their window. Sudden knocking at the door snaps them both out of it. Mitsuru heads over to see who's visiting this early. Two guys in suits are waiting outside, one with long hair and a bunch of piercings. Fuma immediately pulls his daughter back, sensing something is off. The guys claim they're from the police station, investigating what happened at the school. Fuma plays the polite host, serving them tea while they settle in. The long-haired one wastes no time, asking Mitsuru to recount what she saw during the boom. She sticks to the script, saying she just got scared and ran as fast as she could. The guy leans in way too close, giving off a seriously creepy vibe. He keeps pushing, asking if she saw anything unrealistic, no matter how crazy it sounds. Fuma's had enough, and tells the guy to back off. The older suit decides it's time to head out. He thanks them for the talk, but the tension in the room is still through the roof. Fuma watches them with a stone-cold expression. He's already realized these guys are fakes. He can sense the magic power coming off them. He tries to get a closer look, offering to carry their briefcase on the way out. The blonde guy brushes him off, claiming his bandaged hand is just from a minor burn. Fuma watches them walk away, wondering if they already know about Mitsuru's power. As they leave, the villains confirm that they found exactly the kind of energy they were looking for. Fuma gives his daughter one last warning to stay under the radar at school. But that monster from earlier is already prying the window open. It crawls right onto Mitsuru's bed when she's gone. The creature starts licking her pillow like a total creep. Mitsuru's already halfway to school, completely unaware she's being watched. She arrives at Rikuhara Junior High for another day. She waves goodbye to her dad, who's looking sharp in his suit. Her friend Shinkai comes charging in, full of energy. She immediately asks about the handsome guy Mitsuru was just talking to. Shinkai's dying for the details, thinking Mitsuru scored a date or something. When Mitsuru tells her it was just her dad, Shinkai loses it, thinking he was a college student. Mitsuru just shrugs it off, saying he just works out a lot. Meanwhile, Fuma's at his actual job, a trendy-looking coffee shop. He's back to playing the humble barista, carefully pouring drinks, and just like at the school, he's got all the female regulars swooning over how handsome he is. His boss is leaning on the counter, asking him if life as a single dad is actually as tough as it looks. She starts venting about a massive fight with her husband, but Fuma just keeps his cool and jokes that all that anger is going to give her wrinkles. He keeps his focus on the coffee, letting her ramble while he gets her order ready. He slides the steaming mug over with a polite smile, playing the perfect barista. She doesn't even look at the coffee, her eyes locked on him as she takes the cup. Then she drops the invitation she wants him to grab dinner tonight, and even offers to let him clock out early. Fuma doesn't miss a beat before respectfully turning her down, earning him a sigh and being called boring for the 100th time. But then it hits him. Mitsuru's club activities are today, and he's totally losing track of time. Suddenly, he's the one begging to leave early, leaving the boss lady stunned as he switches into anxious dad mode. He doesn't wait for a real answer before bolting out the door with a quick thank you. Once he's clear of the shop, Fuma breaks into a sprint that's definitely not normal for a barista. He ducks into a narrow alleyway, already pushing his speed past what any human should be capable of. He starts parkouring off the walls like it's nothing, scaling the side of a building in seconds. He hits the rooftop and barely pauses to catch his breath before scanning the streets below. With one massive leap, he clears the gap to the next building, hunting for any sign of his daughter. Meanwhile, Mitsuru is standing on the sidewalk, starting to worry that her dad is running late for their pickup. That's when a familiar figure approaches from behind. It's the long-haired guy from earlier. The two detectives corner her, acting like this is just a routine follow-up. They tell her she needs to come down to the police station for a few more questions. Mitsuru tries to stand her ground, telling them she has to wait for her father right where she is. But they hit her with the perfect lie. They claim her dad got into some trouble and is already waiting for her at the station. Naturally, she panics and demands to be taken to him immediately, falling right into their trap. The long-haired guy gives her a creepy smirk as he holds the car door open for her. She hops in and they speed off, just as Fuma is seen sprinting through the streets in the distance. Fuma finally makes it to the pickup spot, but his heart sinks when he sees the sidewalk is completely empty. He tries to convince himself she's just stuck in a late club meeting, but he knows something is wrong. Inside the car, Mitsuru is starting to get suspicious, asking why they've been driving for so long without reaching a station. She demands they stop the car, but the driver just keeps humming along to the radio like he can't hear her. When she turns to the guy next to her to ask about her dad, she sees a look on his face that definitely isn't from a cop. Before she can even scream, he lunges forward and tries to force a cloth over her mouth. The drug kicks in fast, and she slumps over in the seat while the long-haired guy mocks his partner for being too roundabout with her. Fuma is closing the gap at impossible speeds, shouting a challenge as he reels them in. He hits the roof with a massive thud, shattering the back window instantly. Glass shatters everywhere as he clings to the top, eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity. He lets out a roar, demanding they give his daughter back right now. Realizing they're in trouble, the long-haired guy tells his partner to grab the kid and make a run for it. The car swerves wildly as Fuma is nearly thrown off by the sudden maneuvers. The driver bails out of the car with the unconscious Mitsuru, trying to make a clean getaway. Fuma lands on the pavement and locks eyes with the long-haired freak who's ready to play bodyguard. Fuma doesn't waste a second, launching a flying kick that forces the guy to back off. But the fake cop is just as fast, landing a heavy kick that sends Fuma crashing back into the car. He casually adjusts his tie, acting more annoyed about the repair bill than the actual fight. Fuma and the long-haired guy are a blur of limbs, trading rapid-fire kicks and strikes in the middle of the street. Fuma manages to land a solid punch right to the fake cop's chest, but the villain barely flinches. With a powerful surge of energy, Fuma sends the antagonist skidding back across the asphalt. The long-haired fake cop wipes his mouth, a twisted smirk on his face as he admits that Fuma isn't half bad. Suddenly, he pulls a handgun from his jacket and levels it at Fuma, his tone cold as he orders him not to move. Fuma glares back, his teeth gritted in pure rage as he faces down the barrel of the weapon. The villain laughs to himself, thinking about how pleased his master will be with such a high-quality harvest. Fuma ignores the threat and charges forward, demanding to know where they've taken his daughter, Mitsuru. Without hesitation, the fake cop pulls the trigger, the muzzle flash lighting up the evening air as he fires several rounds. Fuma's reflexes are beyond human, as he weaves through the hail of bullets, the air whistling past his ears. He launches himself into the air, delivering a thunderous flying kick that catches the fake cop right in the jaw. He doesn't let up for a second, keeping the pressure on with a relentless series of acrobatic maneuvers. Fuma's hands move in a blur, throwing a barrage of punches that the fake cop is forced to desperately block. Mid-air, Fuma reaches out and snags the villain's wrist, pinning him down against the cracked pavement. He follows through with a devastating close-range strike, pouring all his frustration into the blow. Fuma lands one final, heavy kick that sends the long-haired man tumbling backward. "Akai!" a voice calls out, making Fuma freeze. Another man in a dark suit stands nearby, carrying a mysterious briefcase. The newcomer tells them that the fight has gone far enough, opening the case to reveal a grotesque, pulsing mass of flesh covered in unblinking eyes. Fuma stares in horror at the biological nightmare, his mind racing to process what he's seeing. One of the monster's eyes suddenly detaches and flies toward him like a projectile. Fuma tries to shield himself, but the eye erupts into a massive, choking cloud of white smoke. Fuma staggers, covering his mouth as he tries to breathe, but the smoke is everywhere. His vision begins to swim and blur, and he realizes with a sinking feeling that the gas was a trap. He lets out one last curse before his strength fails him completely, and he collapses into the fog. Fuma's eyes snap open as he gasps for air, his heart hammering against his ribs. He finds himself in a sterile hospital room, surrounded by several men in suits who are watching him intently. A weathered man with silver hair and square glasses, the real detective, leans over him, exhaling a cloud of cigarette smoke. Fuma tries to sit up but is jerked back by the sound of metal rattling. He's been handcuffed to the hospital bed. The detective holds up his badge and explains that they have security footage of Fuma entering the school right before the explosion. Fuma's head is in his hands as he tries to argue, pointing out how insane it would be to attack the school his own daughter attends. He shouts at the detective, pleading with them to go and save Mitsuru from the men who kidnapped her. The detective looks at him with a mix of pity and suspicion, claiming that Mitsuru is perfectly safe at home with Fuma's wife. Fuma's face pales and his jaw drops in utter confusion as the detective's words sink in. "I don't have a wife," he mutters to himself, his mind reeling as he realizes something is fundamentally wrong. He looks at the group of officers, wondering if they are being manipulated by the same forces that took his daughter. The detective turns to leave, telling Fuma that once he's calmed down, they'll be taking him to headquarters for further questioning. As soon as the door closes, Fuma's expression hardens. He grips the handcuffs and snaps the metal chain with a single, violent pull. He clenches his fist, his eyes burning with a new resolve. He doesn't care about the police. He has to save Mitsuru. The officers outside are stunned as the door flies open, Fuma's silent fury radiating from him as he pushes past. He ignores their shouts and runs toward the nearest window, not looking back for a second. Fuma hurls himself through the glass, plummeting several stories down toward the street below. He lands in a crouch, the impact shattering the concrete beneath his feet as he prepares to hunt down the people who took his child. Fuma races through the empty city streets, his heart pounding as he searches for any sign of his daughter. He skids to a halt in front of a blue sign, pointing toward an exit. But something about the situation feels off. To his surprise, he finds himself trapped in the middle of a massive, perfectly manicured hedge maze. He runs through the labyrinthine paths, the walls of greenery seeming to shift and change whenever he isn't looking. Every time he thinks he's found a way out, the same exit sign appears, mockingly leading him back to where he started. Fuma stops, his body trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and mounting fury as the world around him begins to warp and distort. Looking up at the strange, swirling sky, he realizes with a grimace that he's been trapped inside an alternate dimension. Far away from the illusion, a desperate cry for Mitsuru echoes through the air, though there is no one around to hear it. Meanwhile, the long-haired fake cop and his partner carry the unconscious Mitsuru toward a decrepit, rusted factory on the outskirts of town. They enter the dark, cavernous building and carefully lay the girl down on the cold concrete floor. The man in the suit looks down at Mitsuru, confirming to his unseen master that they have brought the promised tribute. They stand before a towering, cloaked figure, formally presenting the item they were sent to retrieve. The long-haired fake cop can't help but smirk, boasting that a high-quality soul like hers is a rare find. From beneath the heavy, eye-covered folds of its red cloak, a low, menacing voice emanates, unimpressed by their vanity. Lord Hyakume, a grotesque horror with a face made of writhing tentacles and dozens of unblinking eyes, stares down at them. They quickly assure the monster that, although they faced a minor interruption, the problem has already been dealt with. The man with the briefcase explains that the intruder who tried to stop them is now safely locked away in a space from which there is no return. Deep within that prison, Fuma crouches on the floor of the hospital room, his mind racing to find a way back to the real world. He realizes that the only way to break through the illusion and escape this artificial space is to find a rift in the dimension's fabric. Frustration finally boils over, and Fuma lets out a powerful, bone-chilling scream that echoes through the empty corridor. Back in reality, the real detective and his team burst into the hospital room, only to find the bed empty and the window shattered. The guards barge into the room and realize their target is already gone. Fuma has been hiding right above them on the doorframe, waiting for his moment. He drops down and levels one of the guys with a heavy kick to the head. Before the others can react, Fuma connects with a solid punch to the face. Within seconds, the whole search party is knocked out and scattered across the floor. He drags them out of the way, needing to find an exit as fast as possible. He steps back into the hallway, but the exit is nowhere to be found. Instead, he's greeted by the doctor, who offers a creepy peace sign and warns him not to run amok in his hospital. Fuma charges at him, thinking that taking down the leader is his only way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, the environment begins to warp and dissolve around him. The floor opens up, and he falls into a swirling, blood-red void. Ghostly hands reach out to grab him, and he realizes his magic is completely neutralized in this space. He struggles as he's pulled deeper into the distorted reality. The scene shifts, and now he's strapped shirtless to an operating table. A pair of surgeons hold him down while he demands to know what they're doing. One of them raises his hands in a twisted gesture, talking about carving him up into pieces. The lead surgeon leans in with a scalpel, promising to take his time with every cut. Fuma stops struggling and shouts at the top of his lungs, calling for his blade to return to him. Miles away, his katana reacts to the summons and takes flight through the city. It smashes through the hospital wall, sending glass and debris flying everywhere. The surgeons freeze in terror as the weapon hovers right above its master. The blade spins through the air, cutting down the first surgeon before he can react. It continues its dance, slicing through the rest of the staff with lethal precision. With one final sweep, the sword cuts through the shackles on Fuma's wrists and ankles. Fuma stands up, looking at the carnage he just unleashed. Somewhere else entirely, a car speeds down a winding mountain road. The traffickers inside are laughing, thinking they've just made a massive profit on their latest job. One of them smokes a cigarette while complaining about the brat they kidnapped. He doesn't notice the shadow hovering over the car until the very last second. Fuma slams onto the roof, his hands gripping the metal as he prepares to breach. He slashes through the roof and the driver in one fluid motion. The car begins to fall apart under the sheer force of his assault. Fuma drops into the back seat, sword drawn and eyes locked on the terrified trafficker. The car swerves wildly as Fuma demands to know where his daughter is. He grabs the guy by the hair and presses his blade to his throat, done playing around. A blonde woman in a bikini watches the scene unfold in absolute terror. At the trafficker's camp, the minion of Hyakume kicks the woman away like she's trash. She screams in pain as she hits the ground. The eye-covered monster grabs her by the hair, mockingly asking if an apology is supposed to fix anything. He stops when a new figure walks into the clearing, drawing the attention of all his goons. The eye monster stares at the shirtless man in the yellow apron, demanding to know who the hell he is. Fuma points his sword directly at the monster's face and asks if he's the one in charge. The many-eyed monster laughs at Fuma's arrival, convinced his identity won't matter once he's dead. At the creature's command, a group of armed goons charges forward to finish the job. Fuma remains completely calm, stating that for small fry like them, he won't even need to draw his sword. He dives into the brawl, using his scabbard and pure martial arts to dismantle the group effortlessly. A heavy punch lands square on one goon's face, sending him reeling back. Fuma follows up by grabbing another attacker and slamming him into the concrete with zero effort. He leaps high into the air, clearing the front line to get a clear shot at the monster in charge. The eye monster lets out a pathetic yelp as he realizes his protection has been bypassed. Fuma lands a devastating blow right through the center of the monster's cloak, striking the creature beneath. With a blade at his throat, the once arrogant monster begs Fuma to just calm down for a second. Fuma's face is shadowed as he demands to know why they took his daughter away. Trembling, the monster claims he was only following orders from someone much more powerful. Fuma doesn't care about excuses, he demands to know exactly who gave those orders. Blood drips from the monster's cloak as he whispers the name Lord Hyakume in total terror. Later, back in a more familiar setting, Fuma sits at a computer, back in his everyday clothes and apron. He recalls the monster's warning that Lord Hyakume is a powerful spirit being far beyond his league. He browses a dark web marketplace, realizing he'll need to bypass a password to find more information on these traffickers. Thinking back to the rescue, he remembers the relief of finding Mitsuru and telling her it was finally time to go home. Meanwhile, a man in a sharp suit stands over a fallen body, reporting the failure of their men to a superior. He asks if there were any survivors left at the scene who could talk. His eyes drift toward a kidnapped woman shivering in the corner of the room. He approaches her with a knife, coldly asking who was responsible for the massacre. Terrified, the woman begs for her life, promising to tell him everything she saw. Back at the house, Mitsuru is tucked safely in her bed, sleeping soundly through the night. She eventually wakes up and is immediately confused as to why she's back in her own room. She rubs her head, trying to piece together her fuzzy memory of being in a police car. Fuma walks in with a steaming plate of food, greeting her with a warm smile. He sets down a fresh batch of her favorite croquettes, and Mitsuru cheers with joy. Fuma watches as she starts digging in, gently reminding her to eat slowly. He quickly turns into the nagging dad, insisting she eat her vegetables too, which only earns him a pout. While eating, Mitsuru mentions meeting some policemen who told her he was in trouble. Fuma's face hardens as he scolds her for trusting strangers, his fear for her safety leaking through his calm facade. Mitsuru gets defensive, shouting that she was only acting out of worry for him. Realizing things are getting heated, Fuma heads back to the kitchen to make more food and let her cool off. As he fries the next batch, his mind is clearly far away from the dinner table. He pulls out his phone and makes a call, his expression shifting into something much colder. On the other end, his info broker is busy stuffing his face while answering the sudden call. Fuma watches a news report about the gang conflict at the factory, knowing the public is being fed a cover story. He realizes someone is working hard to keep the existence of monsters a secret from the world. Later, Fuma heads out to meet his contact, who is currently disguised in a flamboyant feminine outfit. Fuma is so caught off guard by the transformation that he nearly chokes on his drink. He stares at the large man in drag, sweating as he asks who on earth he's even looking at. The info broker laughs at Fuma's bewildered reaction, teasing him for not recognizing his flamboyant disguise. Fuma offers a hesitant thumbs up, admitting the look actually suits his friend, though the broker quickly snaps him back to the matter at hand. Getting down to business, Fuma shows the broker the password-protected site he discovered, hoping his expertise can bypass the security. Without a second thought, the info broker dives into the hack, his fingers flying across the laptop's keyboard. In no time at all, he cracks the code, leaving Fuma stunned by the sheer speed of the operation. They scroll through the horrific site together, finding an illegal marketplace filled with weapons and human trafficking. One specific listing catches their eye, a child with high magic aptitude priced at a staggering $1 billion. The broker notes that this particular entry has its own dedicated page, suggesting its importance far outweighs the other listings. Fuma stares at the screen, a dark realization settling over him as he connects this high-priced bounty to the constant attacks on Mitsuru. Desperate to keep his daughter safe, Fuma asks for help finding a new, more secure home, causing the broker to choke on his coffee in surprise. The broker immediately protests, reminding Fuma of his outstanding debts, while Fuma desperately pleads for just one more favor. Fuma is pleading with the older woman, asking for a little more time since they've known each other so long. She agrees to help, but warns him he needs to hide out until they can find a new place for him. If the organization finds him before that, he's as good as dead. Fuma just plays it off with a nervous laugh. At school, Mitsuru is off in her own world, staring out the window. The new homeroom teacher, Fuji Nohara, introduces himself to the class. He's a charming guy with glasses who promises he'll protect every single student. Mitsuru is immediately impressed, thinking the new teacher is incredibly cool. Nohara then calls out Mitsuru, commending her for showing bravery during the recent incident. He tells her to come up to the front, leaving her completely stunned. She tries to be humble about it, saying she just acted on instinct. The teacher claps and tells the whole class they should follow her example. After school, Mitsuru bursts through the front door with a huge smile. She kicks her shoes off, still feeling great about the praise she got. She heads into the living room but finds the place empty. There's a note on the table from her dad. He's out on an errand and left her dinner. She digs in, still giggling to herself about her day. As night falls, we see a local pachinko parlor. Inside, a man with a baseball bat walks past the rows of players. Red energy starts leaking out of the machines, and it's clearly something supernatural. The man with the bat walks up to the control room. In the back, Lord Hyakume stands before a massive, fleshy wall covered in screaming faces. Suddenly, Fuma crashes through the glass, taking out the guards in an instant. He drops down on them from above, sending bodies and furniture flying. The thugs surround him, shouting and asking who the hell he is. Fuma takes a look around and notices the machines are all rusted and falling apart. The guys aren't happy about the intrusion and demand an answer. They all draw their weapons, surrounding Fuma, who's still wearing his yellow cooking apron. Fuma doesn't look bothered. He just tells them he wants to see someone called Hyakume. One of the thugs puts a gun to his head, laughing at his demand. Fuma just reaches up and crushes the barrel of the gun with his bare hand. The other guards don't hesitate and start opening fire. Fuma draws his sword in a blur of movement. He deflects every single bullet with ease, his blade moving too fast to see. A voice from the stairs tells them all to lower their guns. A man in a suit looks down at the scene, deciding it's time to talk. He introduces himself as Shuichi, the manager of the place. They move to a back office where Shuichi politely serves some tea. He asks Fuma point blank if he's one of those monster killers. Fuma stays quiet, certain that this guy is definitely connected to the organization. He suddenly sees a vision of Lord Hyakume looming behind Shuichi, surrounded by flames. Fuma rubs his eyes, trying to shake the hallucination. When he looks again, the vision is gone. He wonders if his eyes are playing tricks on him. Shuichi says he doesn't need to answer, but he's got a proposal. He offers to grant Fuma any wish, claiming he does this for other killers too. He leans back, suggesting they work together to protect the peace of the land. Fuma tells him he's ready to name his wish. With a terrifying look, he demands the head of the guy's master. Shuichi's fake smile vanishes instantly. Shuichi pulls a hidden gun, screaming that Fuma doesn't know his place. He fires, the bullet grazing past Fuma's face. But Fuma is already mid-swing, severing the guy's hand and the gun in a spray of blood. Thugs burst into the office, and a desperate Shuichi orders them to finish him off. Fuma doesn't skip a beat, carving through the reinforcements like they're made of paper. He turns back to the manager, his glowing sword ready to end it. Fuma brings his blade down, but it strikes something solid in midair. He grits his teeth, realizing there's an invisible wall blocking his strike. He stares at the barrier, wondering what the hell is protecting the guy. Suddenly, Lord Hyakume appears in the flesh, telling Fuma he'll go to hell. Fuma points his sword at the entity, demanding to know if he's the one who took Mitsuru. The monk ignores him, floating above a glowing ritual circle as he starts to chant. Weird symbols start appearing in the air as the entity continues its prayer. A massive surge of energy erupts from the monk, shaking the entire room. The surrounding goons begin to collapse, blood pouring from their eyes as their heads feel like they're about to explode. Fuma lets out a roar, putting all his strength into a swing against the shield. The energy from the barrier throws him back, keeping the monk out of reach. He catches his breath, realizing this isn't a barrier he can just cut through. Fuma admits to himself that this thing is way more dangerous than he expected. Meanwhile, Shuichi tries to make a break for it through a window, thinking he can just jump to safety. He doesn't make it. Fuma grabs him by the collar, dragging his screaming face back inside. Fuma slams him onto the floor, his blade resting right against the guy's neck. He demands the location of Lord Hyakume, tired of the games. He offers a simple deal. Tell him where the ledger is, and he might let him live. Cut to a suburban factory where a guard is making his rounds with a flashlight. He spots a coworker slumped over on the ground and rushes over. He yells out to check if the guy is okay, completely unaware of Fuma standing right behind him. In one smooth motion, Fuma takes the guard down with a strike to the neck. He recalls the intel he squeezed out of Shuichi about the ledger being kept here. He looks through a doorway, spotting a group of armed men guarding the facility. He doesn't bother sneaking. He just charges right into the room. The guards are caught off guard, barely having time to ask who he is. Fuma responds with his blade, taking off a man's arm before he can even reach for a weapon. The leader of the group screams for them to take the intruder down. A wave of goons rushes Fuma at once, weapons drawn. Fuma swings his glowing sword in a wide arc, declaring he's going to crush every last one of them. Fuma doesn't waste any time, dropping 2 guards in a heartbeat as he moves through the warehouse. He swings his glowing blade with lethal precision, his focus entirely on the task at hand. Even when surrounded, he's a whirlwind of steel, parrying and counterattacking before the goons can even blink. A guard stands frozen in horror, clutching a mannequin head that's apparently part of their sick inventory. He drops everything and bolts for the door as he sees Fuma approaching through the carnage. Fuma stands firm at the bottom of the stairs, watching as more fodder rushes down to meet their end. He meets them halfway, leaping into the air to bring the fight directly to them. A A spray of crimson paints the walls as Fuma carves a path through the reinforcements. Around the corner, a bald goon grips his pistol, his eyes wide with the realization that he's the only one left. Fuma is on him in a flash, his sword slicing through both the gun and the man in a single, effortless stroke. With a look of pure cold fury, Fuma holds his blade ready and demands the ledger. The terrified goon immediately folds, pointing toward the desk while begging for his life. He pulls the book from a drawer and shoves it toward Fuma, desperate to do anything to make the slaughter stop. Fuma flips it open, and his stomach drops when he sees a list of biological offerings with grisly photos. He stops on a page featuring a human eye, labeled as the next delivery, the blood eye. Thinking he sees an opening, the guard draws a hidden knife, a crazed look in his eyes. He lunges forward with a scream, thinking he's finally caught the killer off guard. Without even turning around, Fuma reduces the man to a pile of bloody scraps in a blur of motion. Fuma grips the ledger until his knuckles turn white. The blood eye they're talking about is Mitsuru Akai. He steps out of the warehouse and into the cold night air, his mission now clearer and more urgent than ever. From the shadows of a nearby rooftop, Lord Hyakume watches the lone warrior depart. The skeletal monk lets out a dry, raspy chuckle, declaring that Fuma's fate has already been sealed. Behind him, the factory remains silent, a tomb for the men who tried to stand in Fuma's way. The next morning at school, the hallways are bustling with students waiting for their annual health checkups. Mitsuru Akai leans heavily on Shinkai, looking completely exhausted as they wait in line. She mutters about how she's been feeling strangely drowsy lately, barely able to keep her eyes open. Inside the office, a nurse checks her clipboard and calls out the next name, Mitsuru Akai. Mitsuru sits through her checkup at the school infirmary, while the nurse takes some notes. The nurse gives her a pretty unsettling look as she tells her it's time to start the exam. Once it's all done, Mitsuru gets her clothes back on and gets ready to head out. She gives a polite bow, thanking the nurse for the help. But the second Mitsuru is gone, the nurse's smile turns into a cold, predatory stare. Back at home, Fuma is playing the part of the perfect house husband, stirring a pot of soup. He takes a taste, but his mind is clearly elsewhere, thinking about the monsters he still needs to hunt down. The soup turns out to be way too hot, making him drop the cool act and freak out like a total klutz. Mitsuru drags herself through the front door looking like a zombie, skipping dinner to head straight for bed. A day later, Fuma tracks a new lead to an underground boxing club. He strolls right past the regular gym members, still wearing his yellow cooking apron. Inside the cage, a massive, muscle-bound boxer is putting on an absolute clinic of violence. It's a brutal display, with the guy's opponent barely hanging on as the punches keep coming. The crowd is loving every second of the carnage, screaming for a knockout. The boxer lands a monstrous hit that practically sends the other guy's head spinning. He stands over his defeated opponent, arms raised in a victory pose. But he's got this manic, demonic energy about him, tongue out and eyes bulging. That's when Fuma steps into the ring, looking completely out of place in his apron. He points his sword at the brute, calling him out for being under the demonic monk's control. The boxer isn't exactly in the mood for a chat and lunges forward with a massive punch. Fuma ducks under the strike with ease, letting the blow sail right over him. The guy manages to grab Fuma by the neck, pulling him in for what looks like a final blow. Fuma doesn't panic though. He looks past the fighter and spots someone watching from the stands. It's the monk, hiding in plain sight among the spectators under a wide hat. Fuma kicks the boxer back, using the momentum to flip away and reset his stance. The possessed fighter charges back in, swinging another wild haymaker. Fuma doesn't miss the opening this time, driving his blade straight into the man's jaw. The boxer collapses, screaming about his eyes while blood sprays across the ring. Seeing his puppet destroyed, the monk decides it's time to bail and heads for the exit. Fuma isn't about to let him walk away, sprinting across the arena to stay on his tail. The monk suddenly disappears right into a painted screen on the wall. A massive, grotesque eye with writhing tentacles bursts out of the painting. Fuma just gives a confident smirk he's finally found the entrance to the lair. He tears a hole through the fabric of reality and steps into a twisted, red dimension. He tells the monk to stop running because he's not getting away this time. Meanwhile, back at school, Mitsuru is having a hard time staying awake. A classmate notices she looks rough and asks if she's doing okay. Mitsuru slumps onto her desk, admitting she's just been feeling completely drained lately. Shinkai suggests another trip to the infirmary, but Mitsuru says that place just reeks of disinfectant. She admits she's also not a fan of that particular teacher. Shinkai perks up, asking if maybe she just needs a sugar hit to feel better. She offers to share her snacks, hoping it'll help Mitsuru relax a bit. Shinkai suggests they head out for a little walk to clear their heads and get some fresh air. Mitsuru is totally down for it, her face lighting up at the idea of getting out of the classroom. Little do they know, the nurse is watching them leave from the hallway with a look of deep suspicion. Once the girls are out of sight, the nurse reaches into her lab coat and pulls out a tiny, sleeping bat. With a small squeak, the creature takes flight, circling her head as it waits for its master's commands. She sends the bat off to Scout, asking it to check if there's anything unusual happening around the girls. The nurse remains uneasy, noting that while the school's magic barriers seem fine, Shinkai's presence feels way too stable to be natural. Meanwhile, in the sanctuary, the monk mocks Fuma for having the gall to step onto his holy ground. He calls Fuma a fool for chasing him this far, his purple eyes glowing with malice beneath his hat. Fuma demands to know what he's doing with all those kids he's been gathering, and what that altar is really for. The monk just laughs, calling Fuma a mere commoner who could never understand the will of a god. He starts chanting, summoning a swirling vortex of blood, and promising to turn Fuma into nourishment for Hyakume. Suddenly, dozens of red eyeballs erupt from the vortex, swarming toward Fuma from every angle. Fuma stays calm, readying his blade as the massive swarm of eyes starts to close in on him. He starts carving through them, his blue sword flashing as it deflects the incoming projectiles in a spray of red. These aren't just eyes, they've got rows of sharp teeth and look hungry for a taste of human flesh. The monk watches the carnage with a sick grin, telling his pets to eat up and grow big. Fuma is forced into a defensive stance, his sword vibrating from the constant impact of the relentless swarm. A massive wave of energy nearly knocks him off his feet as the monk continues to turn up the heat. Fuma realizes the monk's power is even greater than before, and his blade won't hold out much longer at this rate. The monk just laughs, taunting Fuma as he prepares to see how he handles the next wave of attacks. A barrage of light energy beams rains down on Fuma, forcing him to scramble and find a way to strike back. He knows he can't just keep defending against long-range attacks like this forever, without losing ground. In a split-second decision, Fuma slams his hand into the ground, shattering the environment into thousands of sharp fragments. He decides that if he wants to win, he's going to have to make his own bullets to fire back. He sends the debris flying into the air, creating a whirlwind of stone around him to intercept the enemy. The stone fragments collide with the incoming eyeballs, shredding through the monk's magical summons in mid-air. Fuma doesn't stop there. He lunges through the smoke and delivers a devastating strike right into the monk's chest. The monk is caught completely off guard as the blue-tinted blade sinks deep into his robes. Blood erupts from the wound, but the monk managed to brace himself just enough to avoid a lethal blow. Back at the school, Mitsuru is happily munching on the delicious cupcake Shinkai gave her. She tells her friend that sweets really are the best cure for feeling exhausted. Shinkai asks if she's feeling any better, and Mitsuru admits she's totally fine now despite feeling like she might throw up a minute ago. Shinkai is just glad to hear that, smiling as she tells Mitsuru to eat as much as she wants. Mitsuru starts complaining about her dad again, calling him an old man who's totally out of touch with his daughter. She pulls out a small wooden amulet he gave her, sighing about how super lame and uncool it is. Shinkai leans in with a curious look, asking her exactly what the little charm is supposed to be. Mitsuru explains that her dad forced her to carry it at all times, right after that explosion incident at her old school. The two of them sit together on the roof, and Mitsuru decides there's something serious she needs to tell Shinkai. She tells Shinkai how she's always had to transfer schools because of her family circumstances, so she never had any real friends. She thanks Shinkai for reaching out on her first day, protecting her from bullies, and even sharing these sweets. Mitsuru looks at Shinkai with a big, genuine smile, telling her she's her most trusted friend, and she's just really grateful for everything. Shinkai's expression shifts into a twisted, malicious grin as she tells Mitsuru that she's actually the one who's thrilled to be so trusted. Suddenly, Shinkai's neck begins to stretch and contort, elongating into a horrifying, fleshy cord that towers high above the terrace. Mitsuru falls back in sheer terror, her voice cracking as she screams Shinkai's name in complete and utter disbelief. Shinkai's face morphs into a monstrous, fanged beast with rows of sharp teeth, mocking Mitsuru by asking if she can still think of her as a best friend now. The creature lunges downward with its jaws wide open, snarling that just looking at Mitsuru makes it feel absolutely sick to its stomach. A sudden, powerful blast of energy erupts between them, throwing the monster back with a violent shockwave just as it was about to strike. A pair of elegant, stocking-clad legs steps into view, and the nurse's calm, authoritative voice tells Mitsuru to stay exactly where she is. The nurse stands ready for battle, surrounded by a swarm of bats, as she warns the monster that its disgusting head is the next target. The creature bares its teeth in a wicked grin, finding it interesting that someone from the killer organization is standing in its way. The nurse demands to know how it managed to sneak past the ultrasonic barrier her bats have spread across the entire school grounds. The monster laughs, explaining that by wearing a human skin, it can easily mask the flow of its magic and slip through any barrier. The nurse's face pales as the horrifying realization hits her. If the monster is wearing a skin, then the real Shinkai must already be dead. Snapping back to the emergency at hand, the nurse yells for Mitsuru to get over to her side immediately. Mitsuru doesn't hesitate for a second, scrambling to her feet and sprinting toward the only person who can protect her from the beast. Tears stream down Mitsuru's face as she prays that if she can just reach the teacher, she'll finally be safe from this nightmare. The monster's eyes narrow with hunger as it glares at its fleeing prey, snarling that it has no intention of letting her escape. As Mitsuru runs for her life, a faint, mysterious glow begins to pulse from her chest, matching the rapid beating of her terrified heart.